The place was on Vine Street, 58 Vine, I think that's the number. You went upstairs, a creaky bunch of stairs, and there were a couple of rooms there that they used for the cheder. And in the cheder they had very unprofessional teachers. And the remarkable thing is that kids came out of there that could daven. Apart from that, there was no value to the Jewish education there, because the community couldn't support it. You would pay, I think, 50 cents a week to have your child go there, and if you couldn't afford it, they still let the kids in. But there was no community support. The community ran it, but it was poor education. Not like in Montreal.
Montreal, you think, was more organized?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, and Toronto. But
do you remember what year we're talking now? I mean,
yeah, I can remember what year we're talking about. You had 17 and 12 together.
29. 1929.
Yeah.
Did kids go every single day? Once a week?
No. They went every day, including Sunday. And
after school?
After school you went, and there was a female teacher there, Sophie Croach, and Loomer, and I can't remember the principal there. He went to Montreal too. But they had a stick, make sure that you sat still, and it was hard to keep the kids sitting still. And they yelled a lot, and still you learned to daven, but that was it.
You learned to daven. Did girls participate in this?
Oh, there were the odd girl, but very, very odd. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The one I remember is Dorothy Taylor. I know why I remember her. She was one of the kids because she didn't live far away.
Now, you mentioned that the school was on Vine, so
yeah.
Am I to believe that most of the community lived around there?
Well, you're talking about the community. The community was centered around York Street and Cannon Street, and we lived on Jackson Street, so it was quite a walk to the cheder, but you tried to skip as often as you could for any excuse you could. And that was, now, apart from that, I don't know what the temple had, because the temple and the rest of the Jewish community were divided. The temple did look down on the
rest of the community.
And the rest of the community thought the temple was a bunch of goyim. They were.
The temple people looked down on the community because they thought that the community was still stuck in the Stone Age kind of thing, or?
Well, because they came before the rest of the community, and they, whoever came was a greener,
That's right. They had been greeners a long, long time ago, and had almost forgotten that they used to be.
It's not that long ago. It's
right.
It was a consistent thing. Every once in a while, the greener would come in, and they'd hook up with a relative, and they would get help from the Goldblatts for their horse and buggy to make a living, and they gradually advanced. Cannon Street was also a community around the shul there. And what did the people do for a living?
Yeah.
There were tailors, there were bootleggers around it was Prohibition.
There were bootleggers.
Yeah.
It was known that Joe, whatever, was a bootlegger?
Oh yeah, I can remember vividly on Caroline Street. We had some mishpucha that lived there. So we would visit them. So around the back door, somebody would come for a shot of whiskey, and the lady of the house would go over the back and look after them. The Husky Waxman's family, they were noted. They had around the corner, they were bootleggers. Another, small scale.
Yeah, of course. We're not talking Bromford.
No. They were just trying to eke out a little extra money.
Aside from the Waxmans, were there others that were part of this group?
Well, you talk about the Maxman. It wasn't a group; it was an individual.
Oh, I see.
They would mix up some
I see.
Bromford and sell it at a quarter a shot.
So there were tailors. There were what did you
Peddlers.
say? Peddlers.
And the small storekeepers on York Street around.
Now the Goldblatts were a prominent family in those days.
Extremely prominent, on Robert Street. I've forgotten the number there.
73.
93.
Can I ask you, like, what you said, like when Greeners used to come into the community, it was just known that Jacob Goldblatt would help them out? How did that work?
By word of mouth, they would look for some help, and he was known as the place to go to get a handout, enough to buy a horse and a buggy and go around and peddle.
So was he like a Hebrew Free Loan Society?
It wasn't a society, it was he.
But is that how he just would give people loans?
He would arrange for the loan, you see, with the bank. He would sign the note. They would pay him back gradually.
Most of the people lived in that downtown area that you mentioned.
Well, there are different enclaves.
Mm-hmm.
The one I mentioned, and then down on Ottawa Street, it was another little group of, and then on John Street North, there was around the corner from the Goldblatt's office, and their home too. They had the home there, and the Levys were around there.
We're still talking the late 20s, 30s. Now, Ottawa.
I can pinpoint it because my father died in 1928, and we went to say Kaddish. We were little kids, and we would go to Beth Jacob Shul to say Kaddish, or we would go up John Street North. Halper and the Shochet was across the road from Rube Levy's house.
What was the cross? I'm sorry, I missed that. What was the cross?
Halper and the Shochet.
Oh, Halper and the Shochet.
Yeah. And we would go there to, when they needed them to a minion, or we'd go over to Ferguson Avenue, had a shul. There was a little enclave of Jewish families there. And we lived on Jackson Street. There were half a dozen Jewish families in a row there. And John Street was not far away, so there were a few families there. Up on Catherine Street, and then on Charlton Avenue. Go ahead.
Were there ever times that the community came together as a community? Was there a center, so to speak? Was there ever a need for a center that you remember?
It started on Vine Street, where the cheder was. Downstairs was some kind of office for... the Depression came along, and then there were a lot of people that needed assistance. So there was a social worker, and I think she worked in that office. Then they moved down on John Street North. Not John Street North, I'm sorry. That's the one from John. The next street is... Houston, yeah. Where the Italians took over the building after that.
Right.
And then, just after the war, they built the community center on Delaware.
I see.
But the B'nai B'rith was quite strong at that time, so they would, they met in on Vine Street also. Vine Street, a few doors up, they bought that house and they moved the social service office into that. But they kept the cheder in the old building.
And there was a Farban, was there not?
There were other organizations. There was a Farban because it was popular to have a Farban. I don't know where they met. And there were youth organizations. The Young Judea was quite strong, but there was no, it was just volunteer. There was no professional people there. There must have been an organization at the temple, but the temple people, some of them lived down the East End, away from the riffraff.
That's my point. Who lived on Ottawa Street? Because Ottawa Street seems like so far away.
Well, there was a furniture store, Adler's Furniture. There was a ladies' Stringer's family had a ladies' store. There was a few fruit stores that were very prominent on Ottawa Street. Taylor, there were a couple of tailors there. And they...
Adler, I actually knew the daughter, Holly.
Trudy.
Well, there was a Holly Adler.
Holly is Trudy's daughter.
Trudy's
Yeah,
daughter.
how do you know
Right.
Holly Adler?
Yeah. But he started out with a small furniture store on Ottawa Street and built it up. Then he had a branch on King Street, but he became rich.
Do you remember, I want you to talk a little bit about your bar mitzvah. I want to get a sense of, what was the bar mitzvah like in those days? Like, did you have a big affair, like with hundreds of people?
You're joking. As I said, we went to the Talmud Torah until we were mitzvah, and that was it.
Right.
We learned the Haftarah, and they had a few, this was on Hunter Street in the Beth Jacob. They had a hall downstairs. It was low ceiling, and you went down there and you got a piece of herring and some sponge cake or honey cake. And I remember the gift I got, a fountain pen.
Really?
And silver dollar, and one of my relatives from Toronto gave me a gold piece, a $5 gold piece. That was a big deal. But no kids' party or anything like that.
No. I didn't think so.
But and as far as the shul was concerned, they didn't cater to the kid. They had a Sunday school there. When I just started to teach, I went there to teach on Sunday, and I got $35 for my year of work at the shul.
This is the conservative one.
It wasn't conservative then, it was Orthodox.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And what did you teach there?
Sunday school, they had the room was a lot smaller than this room. Some kids come in the basement, and they would come for a few hours.
You weren't teaching them much about the state of Israel, were you? I'm trying to get a sense of when this was. Like, was it after 48?
Oh, no.
Before?
Yeah. No, it was just a few Bible stories.
Right.
And, holidays.
Right.
But as far as Israel, there were groups. I think I mentioned to you, my mother belonged to this Jewish National Workers Alliance, Branch 12. And they would have a homemade table. They would have little bazaar. They would collect a few dollars to send to New York,
Right.
and then the New York people would send the odd person here to give a lecture.
Right. Were you, Abe, somewhat unique in that you went off to university, didn't you?
Well, it was a matter of money. It was during the Depression. It was 1933. Who could get a job then? You couldn't get a job. And it cost $120 for a year to go to university. And you couldn't afford to go to Toronto because that's where the real... and this McMaster was a Baptist institution, but it was a university. So you could count in one hand the number of Jewish kids that were there.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember any of them?
Sure. Cecil Levy was one of them. Perel was one that went before. He was ahead of me, and he was the first one to get a job teaching in secondary school in Hamilton. Lefty Bowles went there for at the university, but he turned to become do better in the Delhi than he could at the university. There was no. And when it came to get a job after you graduated, it was a tough thing. I graduated in '38, and the only job I could get was to be a supply teacher in Hamilton, in the elementary school. But I had an honor degree in math, but there was no possibility of getting a job.
But Abe, help me to understand how that worked. You had a degree in math. Was it that you submitted an application, they saw Lebow, and they said, that's it?
There were no jobs at the time.
Right.
The classes became so large that they wouldn't hire new people. And until the war came along, they lost some people that went into the services so that it opened up. But when we went to high school, there were 50 kids in a class during the Depression. And they stayed at school. They had good football teams because they got old. They stayed around in school rather than try to go out to work. But the girls didn't get much opportunity to go. They all went to commercial, went to be stenographers. They lost a lot of good girls then because they had ability, but they couldn't. Who would ever think of a girl going to university then? Just unheard of.
Well, this was both in the case of Jews and non-Jews.
Yeah, because of the condition.
But you graduate in 1938. There aren't many jobs. Classes are huge and blah blah. When you begin to apply for jobs, where, if anywhere, does anti-Semitism come into this picture?
Well, in the first place, the Jewish attitude was different at the time. You tried to avoid getting in the face of the goyim, you know. You sort of sat back. You wouldn't, and you looked in the paper to see if there was a job available. So you sent your application in. There were jobs up in North, God knows where, North Ontario somewhere. But I couldn't go to that atmosphere, at least I didn't. My wife did. She went to teach in elementary school, one-room school up north. But she had to change her name, and she had to live with the village there. They were the people that the school teacher had to go to live.
She changed her name from
Hirschhorn to Hayden.
I see. Because On the application, in those days, was there not a question about religion?
I can't remember. I don't think so.
Well, how would they know that you were Jewish?
How did they know? I really don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought of it at that time. You just knew that there was something about the fact that a Jew didn't. It was hard to get into these professions.
Were there instances of anti-Semitism elsewhere? That is to say, outside of finding work, like in terms of, say, housing, recreation, that you remember?
I definitely remember Bronte. Are you aware? Do you know Bronte at all?
Bronte, the park.
Yeah, but there's a side on the lake. It's all built up now.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, it was a holiday, so there was a place there that run by Toronto people for women that had needed a holiday. So it was on the lake, and it was a Jewish. But there's a river goes through the Bronte Creek goes through the. So on one side there was a sign, "No Jews and dogs allowed." That was for the. On the other side, the Jews were allowed to live. My wife's family had a cottage there. That's how I met my wife. The Hoffmans here. You know Dave,
Right.
his brother Max, who was the instrumental in building the shul here on this.
Right.
Yeah, he had bought a place in the lake at Bronte, and I was friendly with Dave's older brother, so he had a car, so I used to go to Bronte with him. He would drive, and I met my wife there. But there were a few Jewish families from Toronto there, and that was. But we understood that we didn't go there. There was a little place there where, like a little dance hall. I don't know what you would call it. Like a little restaurant where they would have a dance floor and they would have a jukebox, and they would. So there were Jewish boys that came there. Irving Zucker was one. Moshe Liebtag was another. They would. I don't know where they stayed, but they would somehow be there. And they'd meet Jewish girls from Toronto there, and that was a place to go.